High tension. Philippines and U.S. surround and destroy Chinese allies harassing Philippines in South China Sea. This year's annual Balikatan joint military exercises between the Philippines and the United States, April 22nd to May 10th, broke much new ground. So did China's response to it. The exercise areas and the arms deployed showed the linkage of South China Sea and Taiwan Strait hotspots. A surge in Chinese vessel presence in Manila's Western Exclusive Economic Zone and another violent sea incident over a contested reef exposed Beijing's defiance amid the alliance's show of force. The display of strength and the reaction to it escalated tensions in choppy waters and raised questions about the drill's deterrent value. The symbolism and messages show how parties are digging in, accepting more risk and shrinking the space for diplomacy. Expanded and evolved show of Allies' force. The 39th Balikatan exercise was billed as the most effective, most ambitious, and most complicated yet. It built on advances made in recent editions of the annual drill, which had become a laboratory for testing new defense concepts and weapons in the field. In 2022, U.S.-made Patriot missiles were amphibiously inserted by land and sea in Cagayan, one of the Philippines' northernmost provinces opposite Taiwan. Last year, live-fire demonstrations of Patriot and Avenger missiles occurred in Zambales, a coastal province facing the West Philippine Sea. For the first time, a sinking exercise, SCS, was also conducted with a decommissioned corvette as a mock target hit by volleys from land, air, and sea platforms. The event was also held off Zambales, 235 kilometers from Scarborough Shoal, a contested feature between Manila and Beijing. This year, it was the turn of the Typhoon ground-based missile, with a range of 1,600 kilometers, to appear in a joint Army exercise preceding Balikatan. For the first time, Patriot missile launchers were also deployed at Clark, a former U.S. airbase in central Luzon. Whether these arms will eventually be pre-positioned to agreed locations under the Philippines-U.S. Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, EDCA, bears watching. The Typhoon missiles remain in place in undisclosed sites well after the exercise, fueling speculation that they are now stationed in the country. EDCA bases were expanded from 5 to 9 last year, with 3 new sites in northern Luzon and an additional site in southern Palawan. If they ever get fixed in such places, will China react the same way it did when South Korea allowed the installation of U.S. Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, THAAD, missiles on its soil? If so, Manila's waning ties with its big neighbor and largest trade partner may further deteriorate. Beijing condemned the missile deployment. PRC Defense Ministry spokesperson Wu Qian said they'd brought huge risks of war into the region, noting that intermediate-range missiles are strategic and offensive weapons with a strong Cold War color. The external defense and multi-domain orientation of recent Balikatan rounds have been sharpened. This year's iteration included island protection and retaking and air and missile defense, as well as cybersecurity and information operations. It also saw the debut participation of the Philippine Coast Guard, an agency at the forefront of dealing with an increasingly forceful China in rough waters. U.S. HIMARS rockets were also fired in Palawan, a vanguard province facing the South China Sea. A SCS was conducted in President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s home province of Ilocos Norte, also in northern Luzon. A Chinese-made former naval tanker became the target, raising conjectures despite explanations that the same was merely coincidental. Most importantly, for the first time, maritime activities went beyond the country's 12 nautical mile territorial seas. France, which hopes to supply Manila with submarines, dispatched a frigate to join their Filipino and American counterparts, who sailed from the Sulu Sea to the South China Sea. Paris's entry was its first. 14 countries, including fellow South China Sea littoral states Brunei, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Vietnam, also sent observers. China, defiant and undeterred. Manila's unprecedented moves were met by Beijing's bold measures. Chinese government and militia vessels were sighted near Philippine outposts in the South China Sea. They included 3 Chinese maritime research vessels spotted in the Second Thomas Shoal, a recent flashpoint between the two neighbors. Another was seen off Catanduanes and Samar, way off in the country's east facing the Pacific Ocean. 4 Chinese PLA Navy vessels took turns tailing the Allied flotilla consisting of 4 ships, 2 Philippine, 1 American, and 1 French that were conducting multilateral maritime exercises in the South China Sea. While Balikatan was underway, a new incident happened in Scarborough Shoal. 2 Philippine government vessels suffered damage from ramming and water cannons by 3 Chin Coast Guard ships. That came on the heels of a March episode wherein a Philippine civilian boat, contracted by the military, was likewise subjected to high-pressure water blasting by 2 Chinese Coast Guard ships. The expectation that Balikatan, especially with the presence of foreign navies, would compel China to behave properly and restrain from taking assertive actions fumbled. The latest sea incident was denounced by several countries. But beyond flouting international law and reputational costs, China's defiance made a strong statement. The upgraded exercise no longer deters Beijing, nor does Manila's transparency drive in the contested sea. Will this trigger the alliance to calibrate response? Injuries to sailors and damage to property and all, Chinese actions still do not meet the definition of armed attack necessary to trigger much-vaunted U.S. pledges of ironclad commitment to its junior ally. The Scarborough Shoal water blasting affair may embolden China to push the envelope further. More untoward instances, in turn, may erode trust in the alliance's ability to push back beyond rhetorical denunciations. A more expansive and evolved Balikatan is part of the Philippines' approach of deepening defense relations with the U.S. and other partners to ward off China. Failure to get satisfactory results may force a rethink. This may play into China's desire to diminish Manila's strong bond with its former colonizer and longtime treaty ally and exclude non-regional powers from the intractable sea row. Yet, close calls and all, disputants still tolerate further risk.